most heralded, the most despised talk show in all of human history. This is the talk show hell hates. This is Pastor Mike Online.
And here we are coming to you live from our top secret broadcasting bunker here at Area 52. This is Pastor Mike and I'm online and I'm live with you today. Not quite fully ready to go here, but I'll get there here shortly. Good to be with you today. God has a reason for everything that he does. I watched a movie called TENet. And I've been mentioning it to you now since last week. And, just going to tell you, boy, this thing is really, you got to really watch this. Christopher Nolan, he either's in the deep occult or he's been inspired by spirits or whatever. And I tried to get it out to you last week. Couldn't do it. Thought I was going to do it Tuesday. Couldn't do it. And so I decided that I was going to wake up early this morning, come in early, and sit down and work on this some more to see if there was anything else that I could find about it. And I had a small wedding to do this morning as well at 10 o'clock and did that. It was a different wedding ceremony than I've ever done. The bride was a Filipina lady, and they have some traditions that they include in their wedding ceremonies, and it was neat to participate in that. I liked it. I enjoyed it. And but sure enough, I came in this morning, and within 15 minutes time, boom, there it was. God had shown me then the answer to the question about Christopher Nolan or other Hollywood movie writers. You know, there's some writers that are good, some writers that are not so good. The not so good writers, they get hired to write movies for Hallmark. Because what do you have to know in order to write a Hallmark movie? You have to know that a man will like a woman and a woman will like a man, and eventually by the end of the movie they need to get together. That's all you need to know to write a movie for Hallmark Movie Network. Because they're all the same. They just put different seasonal themes along with it. And some women just eat this up. And it's usually the same movie. But then you have guys who are really, really good at writing script, at laying out scenes and how the scenes should be shot, how the camera should be angled, how the scene should work, the elements of the scene, the design of the scene, and so on. There's some people who are exceptionally good at this, and this is really what separates what turns out to be a good movie from a bad movie. It's the writer, the director, the people who are in charge of the art part of it, and the actors, I would say. But you could have good actors reading bad scripts and you have a bad movie. And so I watched this movie, and it really grabbed my attention because I knew that the author of the movie, the writer of the movie, had written 2 other movies that dealt with the issue of time and how time works in our 3-dimensional world and how time works in a dimension above our three-dimensional world, how a fourth or a fifth dimensional object or creature can view our three-dimensional linear time, because they're not bound by it. They can see it frontwards and backwards, and the question is, do they have the ability to change those things? And so I mentioned to you, let's see here, where is the PowerPoint I'm going to use? Right here. I mentioned to you the movie TENet, which is Christopher Nolan's latest film. And I also noted that he wrote and I think directed Inception, which also deals with time in a little bit different fashion. And what else did he write? A third movie, Interstellar, where he deals with time as it relates to black holes. And the fact that if you go to a planet that is close to a black hole, while you may only spend an hour on that planet, the rest of the universe around you, 20 years have already gone by, or 5 years or 10 years have already gone by. And that's what happens in this book, in this movie, Interstellar, is that they go to visit a planet to find out if it's a planet suitable that humans can go there, because planet Earth is dying. And these movies deal with a savior character, someone who will have the ability to manipulate time and thus save humanity. Now, we already have a Savior. His name is Jesus Christ. I'm quite sure that Jesus is the master of time. Quite sure that he's got it all figured out, how he's going to do it, when he's going to do it, how long it's going to take for him to do it, and when this process is going to begin. I'm positive that he has all of that in his hands. I don't have to worry about that. I don't set dates. I don't go looking through the Bible for dates that I think Jesus is going to do this or Jesus is going to do that. I used to quite a few years ago, and God just kind of brought me out of that, because I found myself being wrong several times. And God said, Mike, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. If you'll promise me that you'll just study the Bible and believe what it says, I'll give you knowledge, I'll give you understanding, I'll give you wisdom, and you'll be, you will have knowledge, you will have understanding, you'll give other people that knowledge and understanding. And the last thing in the world that you'll even want to consider is when it's all going to happen. So I just don't care. I really don't care when God is going to start doing what God is going to start doing. I just don't care. But let me start now. Now that I have a better understanding of what this movie's about and where Christopher Nolan got the idea, because I found that out this morning. And when I found it out, boom, I literally went, boom, that's it. It's all by myself here. And so let me go through this. I started this last week, didn't finish it, tried to do it again Tuesday, wasn't in the mood for it. So today we're going to start it again. The black guy that you see in the movie, he is called the protagonist. Now, it's funny that he doesn't have a name in this movie. His name is not Jay Smith. His name is not Johnny Appleseed. His name is not Barack Obama. His name is not anything like that. He's not given a name. He is simply referred to as the protagonist. And he even refers to himself as the protagonist in this movie. And he starts out working for the CIA, but then he passes a test and he now is recruited into an organization called TENet. TENET. He's never heard of this before, but they've recruited him into it, and they give him a sign that this will be a sign that other people are in this organization and they're working with you. And here is the sign. You see it there up on the screen. All I have for you is a gesture, the two hands joining together, 5 and 5 coming together. That's very important to what I'm going to share with you today. And he says, now this gesture and the word TENet, and how many letters does the word TENet have in it? T-E-N-E-T. There's a reason why, and I'll explain it. But he says this will open the right doors, but some of the wrong ones too. And as of right then, this is one of those movies that you can't watch one time and say, oh, I got it all figured out. Even after listening to my explanation and you watching it one time, you'll say, I need to watch that again. And you'll do it. You'll watch it maybe even dozens of times, and you may find things in there that I haven't found out yet that are in there. But they're in there. So now he's part of an organization called TENet, and he's the protagonist, and of course there has to be an antagonist. But this organization called TENet, where did Christopher Nolan get the idea for this particular organization? Where did he get the idea for it? I found out that there is what's called a Sator Square. Now, when I found this out, I still hadn't made the connection that it was actually what is known as a magic square. And I'm going to show you some things. I'm going to show you a couple of video clips. I'm going to read you some things that actually show you what a magic square is and what it does. And in some cases, they're very difficult to put together. But they supposedly are used as sigils. I had to look that word up. The word sigil means a sign. And a sigil either keeps bad spirits away, or it invites good spirits in, or it is a way to, if you have evil spirits, if you talk them into all going down into this box, you can put this secret square on top of this box, this magic square, and it will hold those evil devils in that box. As long as no one comes and has the key to let them out, those devils are inside that box forever. Here's the Wikipedia article on the Sator Square. I want you to notice that, let me get a pen here. all of the words read the same frontwards and backwards. The word Seder, it reads vertically and it reads horizontally. But it is also the word rotos, which reads from right to left and from the top down to the bottom. The same thing with arepo. Arepo can read this way, or down here, arepo can read the opposite way. With the word TENet, that's easy, because TENet is TENet. No matter how you write it down, it's TENET. It's the middle word, and TENet is frontward, backward, it's the same word. Then you have opera, which is the exact opposite of the word arepo. And then on the bottom you have rotos. So whether you're reading them from left to right, right to left, or you're reading them from the top to the bottom or the bottom to the top, you still have the same words: Sator, arepo, TENet, opera, rotos, and I've read all of those from the top down. If I read them from the bottom up, Sator, arepo, TENet, opera, and rotos. So this is a magic square that goes all the way back thousands of years. And there's some that speculate that Roman soldiers, some of which had become Christians, used this Sator square as a magic square to give them protection from God, which don't believe that, because that's not how God gives you protection. God doesn't say, now write these magic words out and I will give you protection. God never says that. You don't need magic from God to protect you. God just loves you. If he loves you, he'll protect you. If God intends you to live through a war, you're going to live through a war. That's all there is to it. But that's an example of a magic square. And again, those words written on a plaque or some sort of design placed over a door, or let's say, over a bag or a box, they are either meant to keep foul spirits away, or they're meant to seal in foul spirits that have all flown into this bag or this box. Okay? In other words, it's divination, it's magic, it's witchcraft is what it is. Now, it has led some people to believe that it is a Christian magic square, which I'm here to tell you that there is no such thing as a Christian magic square. We don't need one, by the way. We don't need one. What we have is prayer and Bible reading. We don't need to carry around crucifixes, St. Christopher medals. We don't need to carry around magic squares. We don't need to carry around things, necklaces that were blessed by the Pope. We don't need any of that stuff. We don't need magic. We just need to believe that God loves his people. God forgives his people of their sins. And God said, I'll always be with you and I will always protect you. That's all we need. But here's what's interesting. They did this 2,000 years ago by taking all of the letters of the Sator square, Sator, arepo, TENet, opera, rotos, and they took and reformed the letters and found out that it spelled out the word Pater Noster. Now, what that means in Latin is it is the beginning of the Lord's Prayer in Latin. The Lord's Prayer being, Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. But then when they take the letters out of the words Seder, Arepo, Tenet, Opera, Rhodus, and they spell out Pater Noster, they find that they have 4 letters left over. They are the letters Alpha and the letters Omega. So they place them along the side of the Pater Noster, which they say is a seal that protects Christians from evil spirits because they have the Our Father prayer written on them. And they have the Alpha, the first letter of the Greek alphabet, and the Omega, the last letter of the Greek alphabet. They have that written on them, and that's to tell all the devils to stay away from them. Now, people, I kind of wish it was that easy. I kind of wish that we could wear necklaces and charms and amulets that had significant magical powers that would keep devils away from us so that we wouldn't lust after things anymore, we wouldn't steal anymore, we wouldn't lie anymore, we wouldn't hate our brother anymore, we would never do anything wrong ever again because these devils will stay away from us because we have these magic sigils written on us and they can't bypass that. I wish it was that simple, but it's not. Actually, it's rather simpler. We just believe the words that God said. And that He is our Father. And that Jesus Christ is the Alpha and the Omega. Now, this is where I think it gets into the movie. Because we remember what Ecclesiastes, let me pull Ecclesiastes up. Remember what Ecclesiastes tells us about time. Come on. There. Ecclesiastes tells us that time is a circle. There it is. It says, verse 7, all the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full unto the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again. And verse 9, the thing that hath been is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It hath been already of old, which was before us. And so the idea in this sigil that you have the Alpha and the Omega, supposed to represent that Christ is both the beginning of time and the end of time, and that because you have this written on a special cloth or a piece of brass or carved in wood or whatever, that's going to protect you from evil spirits of the future or evil spirits of the past. Folks, that's a lie. It's actually the fact that Jesus, our Savior, is the one who protects us from things that either have happened in the past or things that are going to happen in the future. Jesus himself described multiple times in the book of Revelation that he is the one who was and is to come. And we don't need a patch or a piece of cloth that we must wear all the time to ward off these evil spirits. I guarantee you these spirits know that when you have the living Word of God, Jesus Christ, living in your soul, that when you have him in there, they recognize it, and they don't need they don't need to see your patch or your badge or your backpack that has the Sator square on it to tell them that you're protected by Jesus Christ. They automatically know who belongs to Jesus and who doesn't belong to Jesus. But it does interest me that since the movie is about time travel and things from the future affecting things in the past and vice versa, that the idea of the Alpha and the Omega come up as what the Sator square represents. It represents time, and it represents the cycle of time, and what happens in the future. Can it affect what's going to happen in the past? What happens in the past, can it be something that can be changed by something that happens in the future? And these are all questions that are brought up inside this film. Now, I found out that the Sator square is actually part of witchcraft ritual. See, I suspected that Christopher Nolan was probably very well adept at knowing very deep, secret, occult things. And I'm convinced now that he does. I have a book, it's in PDF form, called The Witches, Witchcraft, and Wicca. It's the Encyclopedia of Witches, Witchcraft, and Wicca. And under the article Amulets, it says objects imbued with magical properties that protect against bad luck, illness, and evil. Amulets are universals and are answers to age-old needs to be healthy, to be fertile, to be viral, and to be fertile, to be powerful and successful, to have good fortune. To ancient humans, these needs were controlled by the invisible forces of good and evil. Prayers, sacrifices, and offerings induced by the good spirits to grant blessings. Amulets prevented the evil spirits from taking them away. Early amulets were natural objects whose unusual shapes or colors attracted attention. The magical properties of each of such objects were presumed to be inherent. As civilization advanced, amulets became more diverse. They were fashioned into animal shapes, symbols, rings, seals, and plaques, and were imbued with magical power, inscriptions, or spells. See abracadabra. Abracadabra is a special sigil or a special word. It's not just something that, vaudeville magicians invented up. Abracadabra! And all of a sudden the rabbit comes out of the hat. It wasn't something they came up with. This is an actual magical word. Now, the Wikipedia article, this is not from Wikipedia. This is from a book called Witches, Witchcraft, and Wicca, the Encyclopedia of Witches. Here's what it said. And I want you to notice here on the bottom, they mention the Sator Square. That gets a dun-dun-dun. The names of God and gods and magical words and numbers have provided amuletic protection since antiquity. They were particularly popular from the Renaissance to the early 19th century, when the grimoires, books of magical instruction, were written. In magic, using the name of a deity taps into divine power. In the Old Testament, the Hebrews give the personal name of God as a four-letter word called tetragrammaton, transliterated as Yahweh, Yod-Heh-Vah-Heh, and pronounced Yahweh. But I don't believe that's how it's really supposed to be pronounced. I agree with the King James that it is literally to be pronounced either as the Lord or Jehovah. That's what I believe. This name appears in different spellings in many amulets and talismans to help magicians conjure demons and protect them from attack by the spirits. See names of power. Some magical words and numbers are arranged in patterns of squares. One of the best known of these is the Sator square. Now, in the movie TENet, Andre Sator is the antagonist. He's the bad guy who's being used by the future to destroy the mankind of the past. Literally destroy them all, annihilate them. I don't know what the future people think are going to happen, because if all of their ancestors are killed, will they ever be born? Boy, that's a big question. But that's what they plan on doing. So the antagonist of the film is called Sator. And he has a company called Rotas, which is a palindrome of the word Sator. They mention the word opera in the movie. The opposite of the word opera is a company that Sator owns called Arepo. Now, here's what's interesting. The word TENet has a meaning. It's a Latin word. The word opera has a meaning. It's a Latin word. It means work, like the work of an opera. Sator has a meaning in Latin. Rotas has a meaning in Latin. But the word arepo, do you know what it means? Nobody else does either. It is a word, it seems to be a Latin word, but it's a word that has absolutely no meaning whatsoever. Now, do you remember the Om symbol and the chant that Hindus make when they go into their yoga? They go, Om, Om. Do you know what that word means? It means nothing. It is a word that is one of the most important words in all of Hinduism, and yet it is a word that has absolutely no meaning to it whatsoever. That's what the word arepo is in this Sator square, this witchcraft square. The word arepo has absolutely no meaning to it whatsoever. It's a word that cannot be defined. And in that sense, it's like the lost word of Freemasonry. Whereas Jesus is the revealed word, and are there any words in the Bible that don't have meaning? No, they all mean something. But in the occult, in Hinduism, in black magic, you have words such as arepo and words such as Om that have absolutely no meaning to them whatsoever. And when they're spoken and used of a sentence, you have no idea what they're talking about. Not one single idea. So the article goes on to say some magical words and numbers are arranged in patterns and squares. One of the best known of these is the Sator square. Although numerous attempts have been made to translate the Sator square into something that makes sense, it remains nonsensical. It was inscribed on walls and vessels as early as ancient Roman. Ancient Roman was considered an amulet against sorcery, poisonous air, colic, and pestilence, and for protecting cow's milk from witchcraft. Holy books such as the Quran and the Torah and the Bible, and then it goes on to talk about holy words that are used in them and so on. But basically, the bottom line is that this Sator square was not just something that Christopher Nolan invented. It had been around for thousands of years. It had been around ever since at least the time of Christ, if not before the time of Christ. And again, what does one of the words mean? Arepo. And it's used a couple times in this movie. The bottom line is it has no meaning whatsoever. Now, I'm going to show you a brief video of a woman making a Sator square amulet to give protection to her house. That ain't it. Where's the video I want? Let's see here. There it is. Let me play this for you.
Anything that has metaphysical properties for protection. And I'm going to hang this baby on my wall. That's basically the nutshell of this project. A couple of tips. When you are starting to write in the letters, look it up online, the Sator square, or pull a book for reference material to make sure that you get the letters in the right spots, because I did it in permanent marker, so you definitely want to be sure where everything is and it's in the right spot, especially when you get in the middle. That's a little confusing. Also, I made sure to use just a piece of paper underneath it, since this is very thin material. The permanent marker would soak through, and I don't want you guys to mark up a table or anything like that. Almost finished square here. As you can see, I went through and gave it more of an antique look. All I used was a little bit of coffee grounds at first with some water. I always have coffee grounds around the house because I drink coffee every day. Then I wanted it to have a little bit more extra punch, so I used some storm water that I had collected and my good old trusty watercolor palette. So that's how I got a much more noticeable antique look on this. And as I mentioned, I did use 2 pieces, so there's 2 sides to it. I'm going to finish the other side as soon as this dries a little bit more, but I did basically make it into like a little sachet or a little type of hanging pillow, and I'm going to be placing this on my wall, but I want to give her a little bit of time to dry. And the last thing that I will do is add some protective salt to her, California white sage, and lastly I'm going to put these little dudes. This is completely optional. These are actually goat heads.
Listen.
That have grown in my yard and have made their way into my house, and they basically are stickers, little burrs type of things that you end up stepping on all the time. So these actually have involuntary samples of DNA on them, so that is marking this pouch as mine to protect me and my property and my household, my family. So those are going to be added in there, just a couple of those, the salt, the sage, and probably a protective crystal. I wanted to leave this open so I could change it out, you know, if I want to put different things in here, like maybe black salt or different herbs, or change out the crystal, I can, so it's easy. And that, my friends, is pretty much it for this Sator square. I just want to close this out with saying that this little magic square is a powerhouse, and it's going to bring blessings to you and your household. It's going to bring strength and power to you and your property. So I highly recommend giving this a shot. And I do believe, you don't have to go as far as what I did. You can write out these letters and these words. Use this talisman in your grimoire or your book of shadows. Use it everywhere, in your behind mirrors, on your walls, in your car, anything that you want to protect. Pop it in there. You can even use this to carry upon yourself. Make a smaller version and put it in your wallet or your purse. Make one for where you work to protect, your area or your territory at work. So yeah, give it a shot. Let me know what you think. If you have any questions, comment below. Alright guys, so here is my front door in all her glory. I went ahead and attached the satyr square to the top of the door. I used a very old rusty nail that I found out in the desert. Since iron has a lot of protective qualities to me, I have a tendency to use it a lot in my spell work. So I hope you guys will give the satyr square a shot and add it to your magical practice.
So basically she's saying that this satyr square is a magical device, and she's using it there above the door of her house to protect her house from evil spirits and evil this and evil that, and to bring prosperous blessings to her house, and so on and so on and so on. And I found this out this morning, and it just affirmed to me that what Christopher Nolan knew about the things that he was writing about in this movie, TENet. Sator, TENet, opera, arepo, what's the other word? TENet backwards, and Sator and Rotas. He knew exactly what he's doing, and he is incorporating witchcraft into the principles and the ideas in this movie. This movie, basically, if you wanted to look at it this way, is a great big gigantic spell being cast over mankind or over anybody who watches the film. Now, I'm not particularly worried about it because I'm born again. And spells that Satanists cast on me, they just don't work too well. Because my God protects me and keeps me from their curses. Now, there is another video, a TED Talk, about a guy. Let me see if I can find that one. No, let's see here. It is this guy right here. He's going to give a TED Talk, and he's going to talk about the connection between the satyr square and its connection with the occult. Take a listen.
Now, Agrippa also published other magic squares of different sizes, and he attributes these to the different planets. The 3x3 square is attributed to Saturn, and that is exactly the same as the low shoe square that we saw earlier. And the other squares are attributed to the other planets. They were called planets. They were known as planets at the time because this was about 10 years before Copernicus. And it was believed that each of these squares encapsulated the astrological qualities and powers of each of those planets. And they could be used in rituals, for example, to bring down the power of Venus or to bring down the power of the moon. You would use that particular magic square. They were also used to create sigils for the summoning of demons or the invocation of angels using a very specific procedure.
Let me play that again.
I don't have time to go into, but were also used to create sigils for the summoning of demons or the invocation of angels using a very specific procedure, which I don't have time to go into. But what I will go into, because you might find this interesting, is how can we create magic squares? One thing to notice is the designs that are traced out by the 7 Agrippa squares. And I'd like you to notice the difference between the odd order squares and the even order squares. The odd order squares have a very symmetrical and regular and simple pattern. The even numbered squares are much more irregular in their structure. And that relates to the way that we can construct these magic.
Now, I'm not going to play much more of that, but basically what I wanted him to say was what he said. Let me go back and see if I can play this again.
Of the moon, you would use that particular magic square. They were also used to create sigils for the summoning of demons or the invocation of angels using a very specific procedure, which I don't have time to go into, but what I will go into, because you might find this interesting.
The summoning of demons and the invocations of certain angels. And that's what it seems to be historically linked with. The Sator Square actually goes all the way back and is connected with a book that was written back, I'm going to say in the 1500s, called The Key of Solomon the King. Now, everything that they say in this book about Solomon the King is a lie. They made it up. They added to the biblical story. We don't have any evidence from the Bible whatsoever that these are things that Solomon had anything to do with. We do know that Solomon offered incense to the other gods of the wives that he chose, the strange wives that he chose to himself, that he later repented of. But there is one story that says that Solomon bound 72 spirits inside of a box or a bowl or something like that, and then sealed them up, what's known as the Seal of Solomon. And they're there to this day waiting to be released. And that really gets into the essence of what this movie is all about. This movie is about a portal in time that can be opened, and information and material from the future can be sent back to the past or vice versa. In this particular Wikipedia article, it says it's talking about the key of the key of Solomon the King. The most common use for these kamiyas is to provide a pattern upon which to construct the sigils of spirits, angels, or demons. Remember, these sigils are signs that either bind a devil or they prohibit a devil from entering into a certain place. In other words, they shoo them away. The construction of sigils of spirits, angels, or demons. The letters, the entities' names are converted into numbers, and lines are traced through the pattern that these successive numbers make on the kamiya. In a magical context, the term magic square is also applied to a variety of word squares or number squares found in magical grimoires, including some that do not follow any obvious pattern, and even those with differing numbers of rows and columns. They are generally intended for use as talismans. For instance, the following squares are the Sator square. They actually mention it here, one of the most famous magic squares found in a number of grimoires, including the Key of Solomon. So we hit that button there. Dun, dun, dun. So now, at no point during the movie TENet does Christopher Nolan ever explain to you that the words Sator, Rotas, Opera, Arepo, TENet, is that all of them? That at no point do any of these words come from a seal of Sator or a Sator seal or a sigil of some kind that binds devils in or disallows devils from entering in. He never mentions that anywhere. To you, it's all about science fiction, that these people from the future can change the past and so on. There's another movie about this called Looper. And Looper is about the future sending guys back to the past to be assassinated. And one of the guys doesn't actually get assassinated, and he's telling the people who are the assassins, you need to quit assassinating us because there's a guy in the future that is like, he's like a god. He can do things that nobody else can do, and we need to control him because he's taken over the world. Well, then Christopher Nolan writes the movie Interstellar, where basically he figures out that humans from thousands of years in the future are saving mankind from the planet that we live on, Earth, because the blight is taking over all of the things that we would eat, that our cattle would eat, and we're all going to starve to death, and we need to leave that planet and go somewhere else, but we don't know where to go. So the humans from the 1,000 years into the future are going to send information back, open up a wormhole so that we can go in it and find the planet that we need to go to continue to exist and survive. And that seems to be one of Nolan's favorite things is that something from one time is going to benefit those from another time. Now, I'm getting into the scripture part of this here in a little bit. You're going to like this. So we find out that the Sator square is actually one of the most important magic squares that's ever been created. And that it has to do with, I would say, opening a door and a gateway that right now somebody's keeping it closed. Do you understand what I mean by that? So we go back to the film. The beginning of the film, the guy says, all I have for you is a gesture, which is, let me go back to this Sator square. I want you to notice that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words. No matter how you look at it, there's 5 words, and each word has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 letters in it. That number 5, I think, plays a heavy importance in this movie. If you notice the hand gesture he's making, he's taking 5 letters, five fingers from this hand, joining them with the 5 fingers from this hand. And he says, all I have for you is a gesture. And if you see someone making that gesture, you know that they're on your side. And when you make this gesture, it will open the right doors, but some of the wrong doors too. And what's he talking about? Well, the protagonist finds out that Andrei Sator, the name they give him, owns a company called Rotas, because that's the opposite of Sator, Rotas. That's the palindrome of it. 5 letters, it's part of the 5-word code. And they build this special port in an airport where if, let's say that you're a multi-billionaire and you make an investment in a work of art, and to get it imported into your country so you can admire it in your living room, it's going to cost you $1 million to get it transported in. Well, you don't want to pay that kind of money to get it transported in. That's ridiculous. Somebody's just holding that over you. So you create at this airport what's called a free port, which is sort of like a duty-free shop on a ship or an airport, which means that you can buy things in there without paying the international tax that takes place between nations when you transport merchandise from one nation to another nation. Okay? So Sator invents this group called Rotas, and Rotas builds what's called the Freeport. And the Freeport, there's the Masonic hand grips. And Masons, it's always about joining 5 with 5. What is the significance of that number in the scriptures? Deep, deep significance. Okay? And I'll show you some of it as it relates to this in a little bit. So notice that he has a company called Rotas, which is the opposite of Sator. And he builds this place called Freeport, meaning that as long as the piece of art or the 2,000-year-old letter or whatever it is you bought, as long as it stays in this airport facility, it can never be charged a tariff on it. Ever. So you own it, and if you want to go and look at it and admire it, you can, because it's being held in this facility built by Sator and Sator's company, Rotas, which is the opposite of Sator. And I want you to notice the logo for the company Freeport. What is that? It's a pentagram. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? This is one of the good guys. He works for TENet, and they're trying to figure out what this Freeport is and what's being held there. And he's going on a tour through it, and he is at level 5, and he's making mental notes in his mind about how this is laid out. And he's going to let his team know as he leaves exit 11. Now, what's the significance of that? Let's open up our Bibles. Revelation chapter 9, which is a lot of where we're going to be in this teaching. Verse 11. Christopher Nolan had to have known this. He had to have devils inspire him to put in all of this imagery into this movie. Because what we see in Revelation 9:11 is that we have a king who wants to come out of the pit that he's in. He's been down there for a long time. He is the king of the bottomless pit. He's been falling forever. And in verse 11, let me go back to that picture there, 11. In verse 11, what am I in? Revelation 11? I'm supposed to be in Revelation 9. They had a king over them whose name, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. You see, this number represents the destroyer. The destroyer wants to come out of the pit and be loosed out of there because that's where he is. He wants to be set free. He's been in there of old time. He had an origin. He was put into the pit years ago. He wants out, but because there is a door, a gate that's blocking it and won't let him out, he wants out. So he wants one of the outside angels to try to get the key from Jesus Christ given to him so that he will return and open up that pit. And that is exactly what we see. We look at Revelation chapter 9. The fifth angel sounded. Remember, everything's going to be about the number 5. The word rotos is number 5, has 5 letters in it. Sator, 5 letters. All of the other words in the magic square have 5 letters in it, and there's 5 words apiece. The fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. So this is how, and this is only how, the person who is stuck in part 11 is ever going to be able to get out. Because the key was in Christ's hands. Christ gives it to whoever he wants to give it to, namely a particular spirit that falls from heaven to the earth. I personally think it's Lucifer. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? That's what I think. Then this scene comes up. And I noticed it as soon as it came up. He said, there's something here. Now I want you to notice. This is what Freeport looks like. This is what Freeport looks like. It's a pentagon. You have the main pentagon, second one, third one, fourth one, and then the outer one. So you got 5 pentagons. And they know that everybody has got their artwork in these sections here, but nobody knows what's in the middle of this pentagon. Well, as you watch the movie, you figure it out. Do you know what it is? They call it the turnstile, a circle. And remember from Ecclesiastes 1 tells us that time basically is a circle, because it goes around and comes around and goes around and comes around. So you find out that at the center of the pentagon, the number 5, just like Revelation 9, that at the center of that is a turnstile that allows people to go backward and forward into time. Weird stuff, people. And when you think of how the Bible says that the Antichrist, his chief goal is that he is going to seek to change times and laws, and they'll be given into his hand, it makes me wonder how much time the Antichrist is actually going to be able to change, and what part of time the Antichrist is going to be able to change. So it reminds me of the Pentagon building. By the way, do you remember what day the Pentagon building was hit? It was hit 9/11. What does Genesis 9:11 say? They had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. Do you know when the building dedication ceremony took place? Where they first put shovels into the ground to break ground for this new war machine building? It was 9/11. I'm not making that up. Look that up. September 11th, what would have been 1941, they started the groundbreaking ceremony on the Pentagon building, September 11th, 1940. And then just, what? 90, let's see, from 40 to 2001, 41 years later, on the same day as the groundbreaking takes place, it's attacked. Whether it was by a rocket or whether by an airplane, who knows? So many stories about it. But I guarantee you that this movie is about what's in here that wants out of there. I believe some devils who have some great and tremendous power are down inside that bottomless pit, still falling. I bet you they are. Still falling. So, remember how I told you that in the Seder Square, all the words have 5 letters in it. All the words were 5 words total, spelled the same frontwards and backwards. So we go back to Isaiah 14 and look at what it says. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, number 1, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. He wants to be like God. He wants everybody to think he's God. He wants everybody to worship him as God. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit if this was all done by church leaders, religious leaders, popes, and preachers, and prophets, and charismatic leaders, and so on and so on. And let's give honor to this man. Let's exalt him. I will ascend into heaven. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. You're going to try to make it, but you're going right back down where you came from, if not worse than where you came from. And notice there are exactly 5 things that he wants to do there. And that number 5 is very prominent in this movie. The Sator square has 5 words in it. Each word has 5 letters in it. And that's not an accident, including the word that we don't know what it means. We have no idea what it means. Anton LaVey's Bible, the Satanic Bible, uses the pentagram because it depicts Satan's plan to put down God's throne so that he himself may sit on God's throne. That's why there's a rise of Satanism in this country and in countries around the world, including Kenya. Eliphas Levi drew his version of the Pentagon in a book that he wrote called Transcendental Magic. And he wrote all these weird things, tetragrammaton, like it had 5 parts to it. Wrote all these elemental symbols into it, including the 5th element, which is ether. You have earth, air, fire, and water, which are the 4 primary elements, but ether is the element that really rises up out of the other 4. Once the 4 are brought together, then ether, the 5th element, rises up above them. And ether is nothing other than the man of sin, the son of perdition. Then we have our old friend Baphomet. Remember what his name means. His name means baptism of fire. And one of our astute watchers sent me this, and I've looked at it multiple times, and I absolutely believe that he is right. Let me get there. Let's see, it's not in Revelation. Why am I still in Revelation? We need to go back to Genesis, I think. Where are we? No, Deuteronomy. That's where we need to go. Chalk it up to COVID fog again. Happens still every now and then. Deuteronomy chapter 7. No, I think it's chapter 4. Deuteronomy chapter 4. God told them that they need to take great care of themselves and not worship anything. He said in Deuteronomy 4, verse 15, "Take ye therefore good heed unto yourselves, for ye saw no manner of similitude on the day that the Lord spake unto you in Horeb, or out of the midst of the fire, lest ye corrupt yourselves and make you a graven image, the similitude of any figure, the likeness of male or female." Well, that's the likeness of male and female. And then he said, the likeness of any beast that is on the earth. Well, that's the likeness of a lot of beasts that are on the earth. And then he said, The light, lest ye corrupt yourselves and make your graven image, similitude of anything, likeness of male or female, the likeness of any beast is on the earth, the likeness of any winged fowl that flieth in the air. Let's see. I got to go all the way through that. There it is right there, the fowls of the air, the wings. Then he said, the likeness of anything that creepeth on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the waters beneath the earth. Here's the thing that creepeth on the ground, the black and white snake. And then underneath that, in this belly part, you have fish scales from a fish. The likeness of anything that creepeth on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the waters beneath the earth. And lest thou lift up thine eyes into heaven, and when thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars, see, there's the sun, there's the moon, there's the stars, the pentagram, the pentalpha, the 5-point plan, the thing that Satan says he's going to do. The likeness of anything that creepeth on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the waters beneath the earth, unless thou lift up thine eyes into heaven, and when thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars, even all the hosts of heaven, shouldest be driven to worship them and to serve them, which the Lord thy God hath divided unto all nations under the whole heaven. And it's not like God, here's God saying, I'm giving you a list of things to look for that you don't worship. Eliphaz Levi draws up the image of Baphomet that just happens to contain everything in the list and says, this is our God that we're going to worship. And people will be drawn to that. They're going to ignore the Bible and be drawn to worship the God that appears in this very image, I believe. Now, I don't know if the Antichrist is going to look exactly like that, but people are sure going to worship him. Here's what Manly Hall said about the pentagram, 5-pointed star. The pentagram is the figure of the microcosm, the magical formula of man. It is the one rising out of the four. Remember what I said earlier about the fifth element? The human soul rising from the bondage of the animal nature. It is the true light, the star of the morning. It marks the location of 5 mysterious centers of force, the awakening of which is the supreme secret of white magic. Manly Hall believed what a lot of other occultists believe, that built into mankind is this ability for all of us to become gods and to have superpowers. But we don't. All the power that we have, especially as born-again believers, is the power of God through Jesus Christ. That's the only power that man has. He doesn't have this hidden reservoir of power that's just awaiting to be manifested in various men so that they can finally prove that man is on his way to his next level of teaching. What's the word they're calling it now? Homo Deus. The man who is going to become God. Who's trying to text me? Who's getting my... Yeah, that's what I thought. Anyway, this is from a comic book I used to collect years ago, back when I was a youngster. I don't know if the date's still on there. September the 2nd. And it cost like 60 cents in the UK, so you can imagine. This probably goes back to the 80s. They're putting this woman on this pentagon Why? Because they are going to fulfill a ritual that involves, see, the woman's body is the pentagram. They tie her arms down, or sometimes she lays down voluntarily. Her head goes in here. Her stretched out legs go in here to receive her partner, whether willing or unwilling. And people, I have absolutely no doubt right now that there are people in this country who have participated in very, very dark rituals, including things like this. What a shame it is that our nation is turning its, not only is turning its back on God, it has turned its back on God. And we're going to get the reward of the apathy and the labor that we have put into this country as far as getting the president that we deserved. Revelation chapter 9, verse 1, the fifth angel sounded. That's why this number 5, and that's why there's the Freeport looks like a pentagon, and it's a heaven. It's a haven, in other words. The fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the smoke of the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power as the scorpions of the earth. Let me read something interesting to you. Do you know where those scorpions came from? Remember, they came rising up out of the sea, which is the pit, right? Ecclesiastes tells us, all rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from which the rivers came, thither they return again. We think that just applies to water. And yet, if you look at the locusts that plagued Egypt in the days of Noah, you know what happened to them all? Exodus chapter 10, verse 9, and the Lord turned a mighty strong west wind, which took away the locust and cast them into the Red Sea. There remains not one locust in all the coast of Egypt. Somebody say amen. So the thing that hath been is the thing that shall be. God plagued Israel and Egypt with locusts. Israel was protected. The locusts came and did their job. God took them and flushed them into the sea. And yet what's going to happen? In Revelation 9, these same locusts, I believe, are going to come out of the sea, the bottomless pit, and they're going to be released not just upon Egypt, but upon the entire world. Wow. What an interesting time we live in. Kathy Burns said in her book called The Masonic and Occult Symbols, she said, the Great Rite Invocations specially declares that the body of the woman taking part is an altar, with her womb and generative organs as its sacred focus, and reveres it as such. The high priestess then lays herself down towards the altars, and her arms and legs outstretched to form the pentagram. You see, this movie was all about the pentagon, the pentagram, being used as a repository to hold significant and special things, so that at such a time, when time is right, they are going to be released. Now, let me do this, and I'm going to be done. In Joshua chapter 10. This is the day that Joshua 1. This is the day that Joshua commanded the sun and the moon to stand still. Now, I had a lady call me yesterday, and she said she had some theories on that, and I kind of knew where she was going to go with it. And so let me help you out. I used to believe that the earth did not rotate and spin and revolve around the sun. I used to believe that. And I don't believe that anymore because of what I see in the scriptures. What I see in the scriptures in Revelation chapter 1, from the perspective of earth, that Jesus actually was trying to tell us the nature of the solar system before any of the astrologers who came after Jesus ever figured it out, that the sun was in the center and that the planets revolved and rotated around the sun. And all of this is seen from the perspective of the earth. Now, I am geocentric in the fact that I believe that the earth is the center of everything that God does in this universe. The earth is the focus of it. I do not believe there are redeemable civilizations living on other planets. I don't believe anything like that. And it does not deny the scriptures. When the scriptures talks about the earth being established, that it cannot be moved. I can reconcile that with other places in the Bible and show you that just because the earth is rotating around the sun and spinning on its axis, that doesn't contradict the Bible, where the Bible says the earth is established, that it cannot be moved. What it means is that rotation and that motion around the sun is never going to be altered. God's going to keep it that way. And in that sense, the earth is not going to be moved. So I had a woman call me yesterday, and she mentioned, Joshua commanding the sun and the earth to stand still, and she was either going to say the earth was flat, that proves the earth is flat, or that the earth doesn't actually move. Now, what I think about what happened on Joshua 10 was that God just stopped time. He literally stopped the measurement of linear time. He had done it before. He's done it since. When Hezekiah wanted proof that he was going to live another 15 years, the prophet asked him, okay, you want God to move the sundial 10 degrees forward or 10 degrees backwards? Hezekiah said, well, it's nothing for the thing to move 10 degrees forward. That happens every day. Move it 10 degrees backward and I'll believe. And God moved the compass 10 degrees backwards. Now, what I think happened was that God took this universe and took away 40 minutes of it, and it went 40 minutes into the past. And I believe that on the day of Joshua, with the sun and the moon standing still, I think God altered the motions of time and caused time at that point to stay itself, to not move. No time motion whatsoever. Now in Joshua chapter 10, think of some enemies that are so mean and so cruel that once they're let out, they're going to do the most evil things that you can imagine. And so God said in Joshua chapter 10 that verse 19, and stay ye not, but pursue after your enemies, and smite the hindmost of them. Suffer them not to enter into their cities, for the Lord your God hath delivered them into your hand. And it came to pass, when Joshua and the children of Israel had made an end of slaying them with a very great slaughter, till they were consumed, that the rest of them remained on them, entered into the fenced cities. And all the people returned into the camp of Joshua at Makkedah in peace, and none moved his tongue against any of the children of Israel. And Joshua said, open the mouth of the cave, and bring out those 5 kings unto me out of the cave. That's verse 22. 22 is the number for revelation. Right now, I believe that in the heart, just like in TENet, just like in perception, at the heart of the earth are these very, very evil devils. They're locked up there. They put themselves there to begin with. If you look back in verse 15, Joshua returned and all Israel with him and unto the camp to Gilgal. But those kings fled and hid themselves in the cave of Makkedah. And it was told that Joshua had rolled great stones upon the mouth of the cave, and he set them men by it to keep them. So the men ran into the cave, and Joshua said, hey, take these stones and roll them up in there. Let's lock them in there. It was their idea to go in there, but Joshua's idea to lock them up in there so they couldn't get out. So in verse 22, the number for revelation, God then tells Joshua, and Joshua tells the people, take away these stones. Now we're going to reveal them to the earth. And of course they do that, and Joshua says, take your feet and put it upon the necks of these kings. And he had to explain, what that situation was about. And he said, don't be afraid of it, for thus will God do to all your enemies against whom you fight. People, you have more authority than you think you have. Way more authority. And so they put their feet on the necks of these kings, and Joshua said, thus shall the Lord do to all your enemies against whom ye fight. The last enemy that shall be destroyed is death. And who has the power of death? Satan has the power of death. So God said in Romans 16, may the God of heaven bruise Satan under your feet shortly. All of this in a movie about time travel, about the future that's going to try to come back and have all of this released so that mankind can be destroyed, so that the future mankind can enjoy peace and harmony, and so on and so on and so on. Don't you believe it? Who's writing the movies is my point. Who's writing the movies of the things that we're being... Who's writing the TV shows? Who's writing the advertisements? When you hear advertisements talking about a higher level, a higher consciousness, a new way of thinking, a new way of living, a whole new thing. This changes everything. They're promoting these ideas to get you used to the idea that technology is literally going to change this entire world. And they want you to think it's going to change it for the best. But it's not. They're going to change it for the worst. How would you like to end up a Kamala Harris fan? How would you like to end up a Joe Biden fan? Yeah, he's not going to be around very long. But Kamala Harris, she's probably well on her way to be the next president, and I think everybody knows it. So how would you like to be her best friend? Why, you could get a lot of stuff done. You could get very rich being that way. And that's exactly how it's going to go down, people. We've gotten ourselves into a terrible position in this country, and it's not getting better. The time to rely upon the Lord, more so than at ever any time in our nation's history, the time to rely upon the Lord is now. And I hope you're ready for it. This is Pastor Mike. I love you. A lot of deep, dark witchcraft being done in movies right now. Deep stuff. Be watching for it. Be on guard for it. New Watchman broadcast. I was able to record it yesterday. Should be out this weekend. You pray for us. Pray for our ministry. By the way, we bought some more food for Kenya. We're not stopping. We're going to keep feeding them. We're going to keep feeding them until God dries it all up and says, no, you're not going to feed them anymore. So I appreciate all of those who've helped us out, all of those who've given. May the Lord bless you. And always think